Hi everyone, my name is Meechan. I'm the Community Learning Development Manager with Falkirk Council, and I've been asked to share my experiences of leadership with you today, and particularly around about youth work and work with schools. And in some way what I'll cover during my wee input to you is the leadership style that I've developed and how this relates particularly within CLD and being a leader within community learning development, and particularly with work with schools. Sorry I can't be with you today, but please bear with me as this is the first time I've ever used a video like this and recorded something for myself in it, and so hopefully it'll be okay for you to learn a little bit about myself and CLD and the leadership. So moving on to leadership and me, I suppose from myself, I came into community learning development in this way of working some 40 years ago now. I know you all think, my goodness, he looks incredibly young for a guy who's been in CLD for 40 years. Unfortunately, no, I'm nearly 60 now, so folk think I've got a wee bit of wisdom around about leadership and youth work and things like that. I don't know if I have, but I'll share what I've got with you anyway. When I first came into CLD, it was very much what I would describe as a managerial approach to working with staff. Very much a command and control sort of mentality on that, and I sort of found that quite challenging and quite difficult to work within. And being a fan of learning, and whether it's on an individual basis or on a basis of working with other people, you know, other colleagues and things like that, and about inquiries into wonderings where things could be, what it could be like, and how we could redesign certain things and arrive at a certain change in a project or even societal change. You know, it was really taking more of a leadership role that I was quite happy to begin to work with, and I'll explain what I mean by leadership later on in this input. But my role was very much, and it has been, about leading from the centre. I'm not too keen about being a leader from the front. I tend to lead from the centre and work with people in different ways, and you know, I'd like to share with you some of that. And so if I can kick off round about, you know, being a community learning development practitioner, a lot of my work is around about the values and principles of community learning development. I don't think you can be a leader within community learning development if you stray too far from those values and principles. Yeah, I don't think you can be, you know, a practitioner in one domain and something in another. I think it's a vocation that encapsulates your whole life as well, and I'm sure a number of you think like that as well. So very much what I try to do in my leadership practice within community learning development is adhere to the following, you know, the values that have been identified by the CLD Standards Council, and put a different slant on them. So it's about thinking about how I can support staff to self-determine, you know, what their work is and how they're working and their particular practice approach that they're taking. And that's really respecting the individual and valuing the rights of them to begin to make their own choices in the way that they do that. And I reckon that can be really challenging. I know it can be really challenging at times in terms of trying to guide and support staff and coach staff in a different way. You know, thinking about inclusion, and it's really valuing diversity and equality, both in opportunity for staff and the outcomes for staff, and really challenging discriminated practice with staff so that they can learn and lead in that role as well. Also, it's critical about how we empower staff and staff feel empowered. You know, in some way, I would like to say that I've never empowered anybody in my life. I just create the conditions for them to make choices for themselves and for them to empower themselves. And it's very much the same with staff as well, how they can influence issues that are affecting them and affecting their practice and their team's practice and their units practice and their services practice, so they can really make change with the communities that they're working with. And to do that, they need to work collaboratively, and how they can maximise collaborative working relationships with each other, with other partners, with the communities and individuals they're working with. That's critical to me in terms of the contribution that leaders can make within community learning development. And lastly, but not least, is the promotion of learning as a lifelong activity. For me, that's been essential to being involved in community learning development, and we need to learn as we move through different approaches, different practices that we can do, and thinking about how relevant they are to our work as community learning development practitioners, how relevant they are to the communities we're working with, and how we can maximise learning within that. I suppose what I've just spoke about there, we need to supplement by certain leadership behaviours, and that can be described as what's innovative, you know, that type of thing. It's about the way that we communicate on a very basic level with colleagues, the way that we respect colleagues, the way that we're communicating, the way that it's about bringing about change, it's about continuous improvement all the time, the way that we encourage people as well as communities to think positively about change, and the way that we motivate each other to do that, to make change happen. And that's fundamentally about listening and hearing what our colleagues are saying, what our, other partners are saying, and getting their different views on what change needs to happen and what's needed so that we can co-design what that change is. And that will really allow us to think critically about what we're now doing and what we now need to do differently in the future, And that's really about challenging the status quo. That's fundamentally about what community learning development should be about, and offering support to colleagues and community organisations to bring about that change. And it's about supporting the creation of new ways of doing things, new ways of exploring how we do things, and helping to create and sustain positive culture that embraces change. And that's all about learning, and that will shape our ideas and staff's ideas about good practice with colleagues and communities. I'll just touch now on work that we've done within schools, here in Falkirk, and a lot of that has been around about trying to focus on closing the poverty-related attainment and achievement gap. That's a big one within Falkirk's CLD plan for 21-24, and how we improve the engagement with pupils and families, and improve attendance, participation, and development of core skills, achievement and attainment, and ultimately positive destinations for the young people, and that's developing evidence-based practice so that we can really look at impact there, and giving thought to how we do that and how we share that learning across with partners within Falkirk, but across the regional improvement collaboratives and nationally as well within a variety of forums. And that's really, really critical in terms of really describing the impact we're having. So that's really the approach that I took in Falkirk, say 5-6 years ago, when I was directed and encouraged to try to develop CLD staff's working and contribution that they have within schools and outside the schools. And that was very much about thinking, well, we'll offer you a resource here to do a bit of work, but we'll also offer you the opportunity to engage with us around about universal and targeted youth work, which was directly linked within the school cluster areas, and to generate an open approach to that and be quite transparent about what things were going on for the children and young people in the area. And that required us really to think about the national partnerships that we had and how those linked within schools as well. So in terms of resource allocation, what I was able to do was to work with some of all the secondary schools, so they had a key contact CLD worker within each of the cluster areas as well. And we would allocate a certain amount at that time so that they could work within schools, and it was very much about those schools, but getting what I called a try before you buy. And what I was fundamentally trying to do was to get the schools to invest whatever resourcing they had within community development approach, so that they could meet the needs of their wider community of the school. And it was what works for them and what they could invest in the pupils and the families to enable them to do it, as well as what I brought to the table. We looked at wider external funding that we could pull into the table, and that resulted in 5 additional full-time equivalent posts being brought together in conjunction with our own staff, who were fundamentally doing youth work and family learning, and that was contributing significantly within each of the schools. We worked collaboratively to develop joint working agreements with the schools. So there was joint planning going on, partnership documents were developed with other partners as well, who were contributing to the community learning development within each school locality. And that really promoted clarity of roles and clarity of expectations and clarity on what the outcomes we were seeking to do. And it promoted real ownership from within the schools. There was regular meetings with the schools, monitoring meetings. All CLD staff within schools now have access to CMIS. They didn't used to have that before, and that's been an essential part of developing the CLD staff as part of a school team, which has really been fantastic in a way of developing a holistic approach to the delivery of youth work, family learning, food work, digital work. And the schools have really, really enjoyed that role, but they're still round about challenges and opportunities for ourselves going forward. Just thinking about that, we need to connect the wider achievement of pupils directly back into schools. That's outside the school. We need to look at the funding regimes that exist around Pupil Equity Fund, Scottish Attainment Challenge funding, because it's given on a yearly basis, but we'd rather have it on a 5-yearly basis so we can do long-term planning with the schools, and the schools can really get into that. I'm sure they want that as well, and it would rid ourselves of short-termism, and we want to look at the way that we can develop, because that does affect the relationship, I think. You know, and so there's real opportunities for us to think about increased partnership working, more effective partnership and collaborative working, really demonstrate and sell the positive impact that youth work makes, and that has been developing over the last number of years, about developing rig around about that, and thinking about the CLD input as being 52 weeks of the year, but also the school input as being 52 weeks of the year, particularly as other funding streams come in place. We need to work collaboratively on what that is, and offers greater flexibility for what pupils and families are looking for. They're not looking for services to shut down over the summer. A lot of the families we're working with are looking for those services to be available to them 52 weeks of the year, and really to think about taking a whole family approach to the way that we're working with schools. You know, if I was thinking 5-6 years ago, if somebody was to say to me what I was trying to do, I was thinking, well, try to begin with an end in mind. I would like to think about getting to a position where I think we're actually achieving things now. So if I can share with you just what a head teacher sent to me, that genuinely sent to me this morning about COD and the work in their school. And I'll read from what that statement is, if you don't mind me doing that. This head teacher said to me, with the COD worker in our high school, we have seen connections with community learning and development deepen further, to the extent that we would consider the COD worker as being an integral and embedded part of the pupil support team. Having the COD worker based in the school has enabled our young people to form much closer links and working relationships with COD, as well as open up a wide array of opportunities for pupils to experience. This very close partnership working has allowed both the school and COD to identify cohorts of young people that may require additional support or alternative learning experiences to get the most out of their school experiences. Consequently, we've been able to ensure that young people have experiences which have enhanced their skills development, ability to work with others, take on new challenges and raise their self-esteem. This partnership with COD is focused on very positive transitions for our young people, readying them for whatever lies ahead after school, and supporting a higher and more appropriate destination profile for the school. In addition, the partnership with COD has stretched out the whole school community, with COD working with staff in a range of areas across the school to support family learning. A prime example of this would be Family Fun Days, organised to boost interaction between families and the school, with COD working with school staff to deliver day experiences that set out a school as a welcoming and friendly environment to all pupils. Similar, COD worker has worked with colleagues across the school to help them enhance the school environment. These examples are just snapshots of positive impacts on young people and our partnership with COD has had. However, they are emblematic of a shared sense of purpose, planning and delivery to get the best possible experiences and outcomes for pupils. 5 years ago, if I thought we would get to this point, I would be delighted, and I am delighted, and it's fantastic that this is now all happening in the schools across Falkirk. It's a start. We need to build on it now, and all of my staff within COD are really motivated to begin to do that. And you know, hopefully I've gave you an idea of the type of leadership style that I've developed, and it's very much a can-do sort of leadership style, but really supportive to staff. And I know a couple of my staff are on the course with you now. You can ask them what it's like, you know, round about leadership, because I see leadership as being very much about leading, mentoring and coaching staff to really empower themselves to get on and do the job that they need to do. Hopefully this has been useful for you today. I hope the course goes well, and I wish you all the best. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye bye.